Hello, beautiful beings. Welcome to Soul Shift Messages. If you found your way here, trust there's something in this message for you. Understand, ooh, understand this space is about growth, truth, and transformation. We don't bypass here. We don't sugarcoat, and not every message will feel comfortable, but it will be honest. I speak in flow, and sometimes that includes cussing. It's just part of how the messages come through. Take what resonates, leave what doesn't, and trust your own discernment above all else. Take a deep breath, and let's begin. If you are new here, please know at this time I create weekly content in 3 parts. Part 1 focuses on what needs to be revealed. Part 2 focuses on what needs to be understood, and Part 3 focuses on what needs to be done, essentially focusing on what changes we need to make to embody whatever we happen to be talking about that week. Based on when you find this video, you will either find links to all available content in the description box below, or you'll see a date of when to expect it coming. So if it's not there yet, just know it's on its way. All right, I say all of that to say this is going to be part 2 for this week, and the topic we are discussing is love. So I am calling this message, Can You Remain Open-Hearted in a World Where There Are No Guarantees? All right, let's dive right in. Most people spend their lives trying to understand love, but they often look in the wrong places. They look at attraction and call it love. They look at longing and call it love. They look at emotional intensity and call it love. They look at validation and call it love. They look at heartbreak and call it love. And they look at dependency and call it love. Love is none of these experiences by itself. These experiences may accompany love. They may arise because of love. And they may even teach important lessons about love, but they are not love itself. At its deepest level, love is not primarily a feeling, relationship, experience, or emotional state. Love is a capacity. It is the capacity to remain open, present, truthful, compassionate, generous, and connected despite uncertainty, vulnerability, disappointment, and change. The question underneath everything is, can you keep your heart open without needing life to become predictable? Everything unfolds from that question. The real subject is not love, it is consciousness. On the surface, this appears to be a teaching about love. At a deeper level, it is a teaching about awareness. Again and again, the movement is not toward finding someone. It is toward seeing clearly. The focus is not how to attract love, how to keep love, or how to avoid losing love. The focus is how to become more conscious, more honest, more present, and how to become more aware of what is actually happening inside yourself. Love functions as a mirror. It exposes fears, attachments, expectations, insecurities, fantasies, unhealed wounds, and false beliefs. In this sense, love is not simply a reward. It is a teacher. Its purpose is not merely to make you happy. Its purpose is to help you see yourself. Love is a developmental journey. Love is not being described as something that is found. It is being described as something a person gradually becomes capable of embodying. The deeper journey looks like this. Projection becomes perception. Fantasy becomes reality. Attraction becomes appreciation. Dependency becomes wholeness. Fear becomes trust. Control becomes surrender. Wounding becomes wisdom. Isolation becomes participation. And scarcity becomes abundance. This completely changes the focus. The question is no longer, how do I find love? The question becomes, how do I become someone who can sustain love? Why? Because love is not an emotion, babies. It is consciousness. It is clear seeing. The emphasis shifts from acquiring love to becoming capable of living it. Embodiment. If you cannot live it, you are not embodying it. Hence why part 3 focuses on what changes we need to make. How do we embody it? Okay? Love is not attraction, beauty, fascination, or fantasy. Love often begins with attraction. Beauty captures attention, admiration creates interest, and fascination creates excitement. These experiences are meaningful. They often open the door, but they are not love itself. Many people fall in love with potential, fantasy, possibility, projection, idealized images, and future hopes. They become attached to who they imagine someone is rather than who that person actually is. That's why love is about seeing clearly. A central question emerges. How much of what is called love is actually fascination? Love matures when illusion dissolves. Real love begins when another person is seen clearly. Not who you want them to be, not who you think they are, not who they could potentially be, who they clearly are. Shit. Sorry, my channels are spot on. Not as a fantasy, not as a solution, not as a savior, not as a dream, but as a person, a whole being. Beauty opens the heart. And they're saying that's a beautiful thing in and of itself. But truth deepens it. And they're saying only truth can genuinely deepen connection. Everything else is illusion. All right. Love requires reality. One of the strongest teachings concerns perception. Most people do not experience reality directly. They experience reality through filters. That is part of what we're going to tackle in this series, is to start the process of removing these filters. Thank you. These filters include fear, desire, trauma, expectations, unmet needs, past experiences, and projections. These all distort perception. People begin relating to their stories about one another rather than to each other. Love requires clear seeing. And they're just saying this is not up for debate. They're saying you cannot genuinely love another person if you do not see them for who they truly, authentically are. They just really want you to understand this. They're saying a lot of what we think is love is not actually love. That's interesting. They're saying they're going to, okay. That is collective. Okay. They're saying on a collective level, they're going to actually, and don't ask me how, the how is not really our concern, but they're saying that they're going to start highlighting somehow. They're going to start highlighting genuine love, because people are going to start coming into divine unions starting this year, if they're not already in divine unions. But what the realignments are going to start bringing divine partners together. Now take this if it resonates, leave it if it doesn't. I'm talking at a collective level. I'm not talking about the individuals in this audience, but they want me to say this, and I'm going to honor that. When the realignments happen, people are going to be put with their divine partners. And whether that's in your experience or not, they're saying they're not going to talk about that, but they are going to make these genuine, authentic connections more available to the public. Like, more people are going to see it. I don't know if this is going to hit the media or not. They said for some it will. For some it will. But they're going to start pushing this genuine love more to the forefront, because they're saying that the collective as a whole needs to actually see what genuine, authentic love looks like. They're saying instead of these unhealed bullshit love stories people keep handling, they're just saying love is not suffering. And they're saying you shouldn't accept that anyway. But yeah, they're just going to start putting divine unions, divine, genuine, authentic love more in the forefront. All right, y'all can take it from there. They said we will. All right, let me keep moving. Put me in my place. All right. So love requires clear seeing. That's part of the clear seeing. It's not just people seeing their partners clearly, it's the collective clearly seeing what love actually is, what it was always supposed to be. Thank you. Got it. All right. Not cynical seeing, not idealized seeing, simply clear seeing. Love grows where reality is welcomed. Love weakens where reality is denied. And they're saying if you're looking at love through these filters, it is weakened. Why? Because reality is denied. And they're just saying this isn't up for debate. They're saying if you don't agree with it, that's perfectly fine. You're allowed to do that. But they're just saying this is what it is. They said, fight me, brah. Fight me, brah. Don't fight me, fight them. Oh, shit. Good luck. Good luck. I don't even do that. All right. Truth becomes one of the foundations of mature love. And that's what they're going to highlight, that mature love, because they said more people need to see it. They're really going to carrot and stick some of us with this. And be like, here it is. If you want some of this, like, they're really, yep, they just said we are absolutely going to do that. They're absolutely going to do that. It's funny because on a personal level, I've been ready to shake some shit up, and I actually changed my hair today. I thought my hairdresser and I made a knee-jerk decision, and I told her, I was like, we just need to go bigger. We need to go bolder. And I thought she was going to stick with the honey in my hair. And I put my glasses back on. It's like, bitch, I'm a redhead. Like, what? But I love it. I love it. I was like, you know what? I just wanted to shake some shit up. And one thing I'm going to do is change his hair color if I feel like it. So, you know, but they're saying they're going to shake some shit up. So I think I was spot on when I said that the summer is going to be interesting in the sense of there's going to be a lot of change. And I'm not just talking about hair color. That could be summer into fall as well. For some people, it could go through the end of the year. Let me just say this. Second half of the year is going to be interesting. I think it is. That's going to depend very much on an individual level, though. All right. Every obstacle to love. I will do that. Shout out to Bree, my hairdresser at Moss and Maine. And Bree absolutely knows I have gifts, and she just rolls with it. Bless her for that. So, but yeah, Bree at Moss and Maine did this hair color. She's amazing. I love her. I will give her that shout out. She more than deserves it. All right, and thank you. Every obstacle to love is also a teacher. The difficult experiences are not being portrayed as mistakes. They're saying there are no mistakes, there are lessons learned. It's what you do after the mistake that determines everything. If you change nothing, they're saying, yep, that could be a mistake. If you make a mistake and you learn from it, it's just a teaching. Okay. They are being portrayed as sources of information. Heartbreak reveals attachment. Jealousy reveals insecurity. Control reveals fear. Dependency reveals unmet needs. Idealization reveals projection. That's that pedestal. I don't know who needed that, but idealization is when you like put someone on a pedestal. usually sets people up for failure. So they want you to be very careful with that idealization. That's interesting. If you are like putting me on a pedestal, and I'm going to say this with a lot of love, if you are putting me on a pedestal, please don't do that. And again, I mean that with a lot of love and all the sincerity. Um, I don't want to be there. Genuinely, we're really all working through all of this together. We're all just walking each other home. I'm just a person who, you know, is going through this process as well. I'm working through everything that we discuss on a weekly basis along with you. I might be a little bit ahead in the journey, but I'm still working through this process with you. So please don't do that. Please don't. There's no good reason for that. I really consider this a community. I consider anyone who watches these videos a peer, right? We're all learning, growing, and adapting in this experience. I am no exception. All right. Anything else about that? Thank you for letting me know. All right. Resentment reveals unresolved pain, and disappointment reveals expectations. The question is not, how do I avoid these experiences? The deeper question is, what are they trying to show me? Again, it's information. Information you can use to see more clearly and make informed based decisions. All right. Love functions like a refining process. Everything false eventually rises to the surface, not to punish, to be seen. They want me to highlight something, and this is similar to something that my good sis, Mocha Love Tarot, was talking about. They want you to be really mindful of the fact they're basically saying no relationship is really time lost, right? This is going back to love functions like a refining process, right? I think we can all agree that there's relationships and there's what I call relationships. And sometimes a relationship can turn into a relationship. And they're really just, relationships are where like it just, it crashes and burns for whatever reason. And so the reason why it's a refining process is because going through experiences where you are not treated well. And let's be honest, sometimes we don't always treat other people well. It's really about learning what works for you, what does not work for you. How do you like to be treated? How do you not like to be treated, right? And they're saying it's really an opportunity to reflect, right? I think we've all had people who we know have just treated us like shit. And they're saying, again, that's not time lost. You learned a lot about how you don't want to be treated. And they're saying that's valuable because you can carry that forward with you, right? That helps you put better boundaries in place with the next person. You actually want me to share that? All right. They also want you to hold yourself accountable, and then they actually want me to share something about myself. Um, okay, thank you. They're just saying it's the clearest and simplest example to offer that will make sense to people. I'm going to start by saying I have improved. I've done a lot of healing work on me, particularly in love. But I concluded a long time ago that I can't date passive men. Like I just can't, because even if I don't intend to, and I never have, but I just kind of realized, like I just run circles around them. I steamroll them. I get bored very quickly with them, and then I just like leave them absolutely dizzy and fucking heartbroken. And again, it's not anything I tried to do. I just learned, and not that I need taming. I don't want to be tamed. Um, Also, good fucking luck if you're gonna try. I'll boot your ass so fucking fast. But they wouldn't call me out on my bullshit. Like I had one guy I legitimately forgot to text back for 3 days. 3 days, and he just sat and waited, didn't follow up. Like, I actually would have respected it if he just was like, hey, did you die or something? Like, what? Like, are you in the hospital? Like, do you need help? Like, I would have respected that. He just waited. And, like, as soon as I texted back, he immediately wrote back. So he was just like sitting for 3 days waiting for me to respond and was like, oh, it's totally fine. It's like, no, no, it's not, and that's just a minor example. But like, again, it was just, I need someone who holds me accountable, especially when I am on my bullshit. It happens, and I just kind of realized, it's like when it comes to guys who are more passive, like they'll let me eat them up for breakfast, spit them out before lunch, and still try to make dinner plans with me. So I just kind of realized, this isn't good. Like, someone needs to protect you from me at this point, and I think it needs to be me. So, again, I had to hold myself accountable and just realize, this isn't the best experience for me because, again, I just get bored with them and I'm like, all right, I'm out. Um, and then, like they just deserved better. So I had to hold myself accountable and just realize, if I get that, I'll give them a chance. But if I am absolutely getting that energy, I know I need to walk away before I leave them devastated because I've just done it one too many times. All right, so that's where you need to hold yourself accountable. And if you're wondering if I'm saying that I need a guy with a slight attitude problem like me, yes, yes. And I'm okay with that. All right. But that's what they're saying. You have to hold yourself accountable to where you're not being your best. You're not treating people the best. And they're saying you can hold yourself accountable even if you didn't mean to do those things, right? Because I wasn't trying to be that way. I also needed to better ground my energy. I was not spiritually awake at that time. I didn't know some things back then that I do now. But again, I just also need someone who's like, hey, what are you doing? What is this? So they want you to look at that on both sides from a refining process. Because they're saying it takes two people to have a successful relationship. If only one person is invested and the other is not, they're straight up saying that's a relationship. All right, let's move on because that went longer than I expected. Love is a practice, not a feeling. Most people think love is an emotion. The deeper teaching suggests love is a way of participating in life. Love grows through attention, presence, care, effort, consistency, learning, participation, and repeated choice. All right? Feelings may begin relationships. Practice sustains them. Love is not simply something that happens. Love is something that is done. We nurture, create, listen, participate, and remain present. That is part of how you see clearly who the other person truly is. Be present. For some of you, these projections, these idealizations, these future hopes are keeping you in the future, and you are missing what is actually happening, and I'm hearing clearly in your face, in the present. Be present. Love becomes a way of living. Love is creative. Love creates. Point blank, period. Where genuine love exists, growth follows. I'm hearing love blooms in the most beautiful ways possible, but only if it's genuine and authentic. All right? That growth may take many forms: healing, relationships, families, friendships, communities, art, purpose, and personal development. Fear tends to stagnate. Love tends to create. An important question emerges. What is your love producing? The answer often reveals the nature of love itself. The fundamental conflict is fear versus openness. At the deepest level, the central conflict is not love versus hate, success versus failure, or union versus separation. The central conflict is fear versus openness. Fear creates control, defensiveness, cynicism. I did say that right. Cynicism. Not going to defeat me today. Possessiveness, withdrawal, and scarcity. Openness creates trust, compassion, participation, connection, generosity, and presence. This leads to a powerful question. Where am I still protecting myself from love? Love expands while fear contracts. Love naturally expands life. Fear naturally narrows it. Love tends to make people more alive, more generous, more trusting, more connected, and more creative. Fear tends to make people closed, guarded, isolated, suspicious, and defensive. Many struggles arise not because love is absent. They arise because fear blocks access to it. Heartbreak is not love. Many people define love through suffering. They associate love with rejection, betrayal, loss, longing, abandonment, and disappointment. These experiences are real, but they are not love itself. Pain exists within love. Pain is not the definition of love. To define love through heartbreak is like defining life through illness. Say it again. To define love through heartbreak is like defining life through illness. And they're saying you just don't have to do that. You can let that go at any point if you want to. All right, the greatest danger is not heartbreak. The greatest danger comes afterward. Pain can become withdrawal. Withdrawal can become numbness. Numbness can become cynicism. And cynicism can become resignation. Eventually, a person may entirely stop believing in love. The warning is not about heartbreak. The warning is about closing. The greatest danger is not being hurt. The greatest danger is becoming unreachable. Cynicism is often fear in disguise. Many people mistake emotional detachment for wisdom. They say, I'm realistic, I've learned my lesson, or I don't need anyone. Sometimes this is wisdom. Sometimes it is fear wearing wisdom's clothing. The challenge is not remaining naive. The challenge is remaining open. Wisdom without hope becomes cynicism. Hope without wisdom becomes naivety. Love requires both. Discernment, not withdrawal. The answer to pain is not closing the heart. Say it again. The answer to pain is not closing the heart. It is developing discernment. You need discernment. Withdrawal says, I will not trust. Discernment says, I will trust wisely. Withdrawal says, I will not love. Discernment says, I will love without abandoning myself. The goal is not becoming less loving. The goal is becoming more conscious. They want me to briefly touch on something because they keep saying ice wall, and I know what they're talking about. Babies, when you get hurt and you start closing off your heart space, and to be honest, everyone, unless you have done some very serious healing, most people have at least a partially. There is some type of closing on the heart space. And they're extending this opportunity for you to work through this so that you don't close off your heart space any more than you already have. Because when you close it off, you can actually create what's called an ice wall in the heart. And as someone who had to dissolve an ice wall in their heart, I can tell you, babies, you don't. It's best to catch it now and to give yourself permission to let that thing dissolve because it was a lot of work. It was a lot of work for me. I had to do a lot of crying. I had to feel a lot of things to let that go. And to be very honest, and this may sound crazy to some people, but it is genuinely me being here now, looking back. I'm actually really grateful that I went through that experience and that it wasn't a walk in the park because it increased my consciousness. It really raised my discernment about the cost of actually closing your heart off, you know? And some people may think, I am being naive for being optimistic and for still choosing to love in this world, but I have seen the other side, right? I've closed off that heart space. I've had the ice wall in place and then I've had to dissolve it. I know the full cost of closing yourself off like that. And you know what? I have to be honest, I would rather be who I authentically am, which is a warm, loving individual who is also part war general and very capable of tapping into that energy if needed. But again, being warm and loving, knowing that, I might get hurt. I might have an experience that I don't love because of that. But again, I would rather be in that boat and build my discernment about who is actually worthy of receiving my love than to just shut it off from everyone. Because I got to be honest, babies, when you have that ice wall and you start closing up your heart, self-love is very difficult to have, to hold, to maintain. Because again, like your heart is closed off to everyone. That includes yourself, right? So they want you to know, like, you don't have to keep closing yourself off. You don't have to get any further with that. You don't have to stay on the path to becoming unreachable. Even if you feel that way, they're saying you're not too late. You can still take steps to walk yourself back. You can make different choices and give yourself a different outcome. All right? Discernment, not withdrawal. All right? Love requires agency and self-worth. Love cannot thrive where worth depends entirely on external validation. Many people seek relationships to answer questions such as, am I enough? Am I worthy? Am I lovable? Am I valuable? The questions cannot ultimately be answered by another person. Otherwise, fear will always remain. Instead of looking outward, you need to cultivate it inward. Why? Because that's sustainable. That's real. That's where it truly lives. It's within you. And then it is then expressed outward into your experience. All right? Healthy love emerges when worth is already recognized internally. Love becomes sharing rather than proving, connection rather than completion, and expression rather than acquisition. Love is not about possessing. They want that to be very clear. If you didn't watch part 1, love is not possession. All right? Love is not completion. One of the deepest illusions is, I need love to complete me. This message repeatedly dismantles this idea. Love is not completion. It is expression. A person seeking completion asks, what can I get? What can I keep? What can I secure? A whole person asks, what can I share? What can I create? What can I nurture? Love stops being acquisition. It becomes contribution. Vulnerability without victimhood. Love requires vulnerability. Connection is impossible without it. They want me to be even more clear. Connection is impossible without vulnerability. And they're saying that's not up for debate. All right. Yet vulnerability does not mean helplessness. Vulnerability is openness. Victimhood is powerlessness. The deeper teaching is remain open, remain soft, remain receptive, but remain grounded in your own worth. True strength is not emotional armor. True strength is openness that does not collapse. Non-attachment, not detachment. This is one of the most subtle teachings. Detachment says, I don't care. Non-attachment says, I care deeply, but I do not need to control. Detachment closes the heart. Non-attachment frees the heart. The invitation is love deeply, participate fully, and care completely, but do not attempt to possess. Do not attempt to control. Do not demand permanence from things that naturally change. Control must give way to trust. Control seeks certainty. Love requires uncertainty. Control seeks guarantees. Love requires trust. Control seeks possession. Love seeks relationship. Many forms of suffering arise from attempts to control what cannot be controlled. The invitation is not blind faith. It is grounded trust. Trust that remains connected to reality. Trust that remains open despite uncertainty. Love is more than romance. Love is being presented as a way of relating to life itself. It appears through compassion, generosity, presence, appreciation, service, benevolence, and devotion. The deeper question shifts from who loves me to how do I participate in love? Love becomes an orientation rather than a transaction. Love is a sacred principle. Love is treated as something larger than personal desire. It is presented as one of the highest organizing principles of human life. This shifts the question again. Instead of asking, what can love give me? The question becomes, what does love ask of me? The focus moves from receiving to embodying, from taking to becoming, and from consuming to participating. The opposite of love may be apathy. The deepest opposite of love may not be hate. Hate still involves engagement. Apathy does not. Indifference, disengagement, and emotional deadness. All right, that's being unreachable. These may be the true opposites of love because they remove participation entirely. Love requires involvement. Apathy abandons it. Mature love integrates opposites. Mature love is not perfection. It is integration. It holds together strength and tenderness, boundaries and openness, independence and connection, giving and receiving, wisdom and hope, and vulnerability and self-respect. Maturity is not choosing one side. It is learning to hold both. All right, that's the polarity integration between the two extremes, balancing them out, bringing them to neutral. It can be shadow integration. I've heard polar harmonics, binary thinking, balancing the binaries. Take your pick. Bring a new one. We have many words for similar things. It's a little mind-boggling, but that's what it is. You have to integrate the opposites. Healing is transformation. Healing is not becoming who you were before pain. They want me to be clear. That is naivety. We're not going through these experiences to stay in that area. That is one side of the extreme. All right? Healing is becoming someone larger because of it. The ideal outcome is not innocence nor bitterness. The ideal outcome is wisdom. Wisdom that remains capable of loving. This is refining your discernment. That is what it is. It's not continuing to act the same way and going through the same experience again and again and again and again. If you're on this channel, I genuinely don't believe that is your goal. It is about recognizing the pattern, gaining the wisdom from it, working through the emotions tied to it, and moving forward with better discernment and clearer perception, clearer seeing to make more informed decisions moving forward. All right? Love is an orientation, not an emotion. Feelings change. Love at its deepest level is a direction, a way of facing life, a person oriented toward love consistently moves toward understanding, truth, compassion, growth, generosity, participation, and connection, even when emotions fluctuate, even when circumstances change. They're saying if you can embody genuine love and hold that frequency, they're actually saying it will make you more resilient moving forward. They want someone to think about that because it feels like someone's very armored right now and they're listening to this skeptically, which I have no problem with. Don't get it twisted. You should question things, including me. But they're just saying if you put that armor down, you learn these lessons and you work through this, it will make you stronger than any of that armor is. Because you're not clutching things. If you stay open, it invites more opportunity into your life. If you are very armored, they're saying it's gonna, and you're closing off, they're saying it actually puts you into scarcity, right? Because you are almost expecting things to go wrong. You are almost expecting to be mistreated. So they want you to think about that, right? Because if you are open with discernment and wisdom, they're just saying you have the expectation of good things can just find you naturally. You're not walking through the world kind of expecting someone to, they want me to say this, put it this way, you're not waiting for the next person to backstab you. You're not even expecting someone to backstab you. They're saying, which actually makes it less likely that you're going to interact with people who are going to do that. And they're saying even if you encounter that type of person, they're saying you have wisdom, you have discernment, you'll probably pick up on it faster and make space before that event actually happens. And they're saying even if it did happen, you would still go process through it again, extract those learnings, process those emotions, and then move forward with more wisdom and more discernment. They want someone to sit with that. I'll leave that there. The ultimate question. Everything ultimately leads to one question. Can you remain open-hearted in a world where there are no guarantees? Can you love without possession? Give without controlling outcomes? See clearly without becoming cynical? Experience loss without abandoning hope? Protect yourself without closing yourself? This is the deepest challenge being presented. The final essence. Love is not trying to teach you how to possess another person. Love is trying to teach you how to remain open. Open to truth, reality, growth, vulnerability, uncertainty, beauty, loss, connection, and open to life itself. The greatest success is not finding perfect love. The greatest success is becoming someone whose capacity to love is no longer dependent on circumstances. When attraction becomes appreciation, fantasy becomes clarity, heartbreak becomes wisdom, fear becomes trust, control becomes surrender, and self-worth becomes independent of being chosen, something profound emerges. What remains is the essence of love, a heart that stays open to life, even when life cannot offer guarantees. All right, that's all I have, babies. And they're not giving me anything more, so I'm going to leave it there. I will be back later this week with part 3, where we'll talk about what needs to be done, what changes we need to make based on what I've already covered in part 1 and part 2. So if that resonates with you, feel free to check back on Friday. And if it doesn't, that's okay. Totally fine to leave it here. Honor your pace, honor what feels right. If you ever change your mind, part 3 will be there waiting for you. So, in the meantime, take care of yourselves, beautiful beings. Until next time, bye.